have you got for us, mate? Well, it looks like Palace are going to be okay, which I think we're all delighted about.
Yeah, it does. I think UEFA need convincing that John Textor isn't in charge at Selhurst Park, doesn't have overall say in the day-to-day running of the football club. But I think once Palace have persuaded them of that, they will be allowed to compete in Europe next season. I was with the Palace fan actually at Lingfield Races yesterday, and he says, you know, we've been waiting our lifetime to play in European competition. They actually qualified for Europe in the 80s, just before the Heysel disaster, when English clubs were banned from competing in Europe. So actually they've missed out once before. I don't think they're going to miss out on this occasion. I think UEFA will be satisfied. I think they'll be allowed to play in the Europa League, and rightly so, because their FA Cup win for me was one of the stories of the season.
Crook, I want to ask you that, you know, some teams are doing a lot of business at the moment. Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea trying to do bits, but there's certain clubs that are quiet. Is that because of the PSR problems, like Villa, Newcastle maybe, especially Villa wanting to sell players first before they do their business?
Yeah, I think also this early window that we've had that closed on Monday at 7 o'clock was really designed for those teams competing at the Club World Cup. It was really so Infantino could get Ronaldo to the Club World Cup. That obviously didn't happen in the end. So I think sides not playing in the Club World Cup are keeping their powder dry at this moment in time. But I think you're right about Villa. I think there will be one high-profile departure. I don't think it'll be Morgan Rogers. Obviously a bit of interest from the likes of Chelsea and him, but he's a player that I think they've ring-fenced for the future. Obviously had a brilliant season. Newcastle, we know, have opened talks with Burnley for James Trafford. Burnley want £30 million for their goalkeeper, and I don't think Newcastle are going to go to that level at this stage in the summer. They're prioritising other positions. That's not to say they won't go back and revisit it later in the window. It reopens next Monday. I think we're going to get a bit of a lull now because Chelsea and City are at the Club World Cup. Obviously, players are away on their holidays. I think probably it'll ramp up again towards the end of June as we head into July.
I think you're probably right, Crookie. What about, Gabby touched on it at Liverpool, is I take it the Wirtz deal was just about done. And there was an interesting one this morning we spoke about at 6 o'clock. There was a rumour going about Barcola from PSG to Liverpool. I mean, I know he didn't start. He's not necessarily a starter. I think he slightly prefers Dewey and Kvaratskhelia, but there's no doubting about his talent, is there?
No, and they are looking for that type of player because I think Darwin Núñez will go. We broke the story yesterday that Al Hilal over in Saudi Arabia are showing interest in him. So I think they will look to bring in another forward. I know they're massive admirers of Alexander Isak at Liverpool, but I think that's a very Newcastle rather. But I think it's a really difficult deal to do in terms of, you know, what Newcastle would demand. Probably you're talking £150 million to even entertain selling their star striker, and they're in a stronger position to keep him. Now they qualify for the Champions League. But I can see the Barcola link. In terms of Florian Wirtz, we expect it to happen. It's not going to happen for the type of money that Bayer Leverkusen are talking, €150 million. That would be a British record fee. I think Liverpool want to pay a bit less than that. They are willing to pay £100 million up front. There will be add-ons on top of that. But I think this will happen. And I think that's worrying for the rest of the Premier League because obviously they won the title last year. I think Wirtz would be a brilliant addition, and I made them favourites to retain the trophy.
Crookie, we've got a long time to the transfer window closes once it opens. Manchester United already brought in Cunha. They'll obviously bring in other players, but Højlund, Anthony, Sancho, Rashford, some of the three of them players were brought in for big money. How are they going to get rid of these players? Sancho didn't agree to go Chelsea, didn't want a wage cut. That could be a problem for a loan deal as well, couldn't it?
Well, you can add Alejandro Garnacho to that list. It was quite a humiliation for him at the end of last season when Ruben Amorim, by all accounts, told him in front of his teammates, you better hope somebody comes in for you. He's really unhappy with what he did after that Europa League final, and even before it, posting his frustration on social media. I think he's sellable. I think someone will pay £50 million for Garnacho, and they will use that money, United, probably to bring in a number 9. But you're right about the other players. I never saw a scenario. I know there was a £40 million option for Villa to sign Rashford permanently. It was never going to happen because he's on huge money. Controversial. I don't actually think he was that good for Aston Villa. There were flickers, but he didn't look a 350 grand a week player. So I don't think Unai Emery was ever going to pull that cord. He's not going to have a squad number when he comes back for pre-season training. That's been promised to Matheus Cunha, that number 10 jersey. I would imagine him and Jadon Sancho in particular will be training with the under-23s while they try and force them to look for a move. Rashford, my understanding, has made it pretty clear Barcelona, the only club for him. Of all those players that you've mentioned, if any of them are going to play for United again, I think Anthony is the most likely because I feel like Ruben Amorim liked his work rate, liked his effort in training. Listen, clearly he's not cut out for the Premier League, but I don't think it's due to lack of effort. I think he'll probably find a buyer. He did well in Spain.
Yeah. Crookie, just another one. The one thing that's almost guaranteed to end in tears is when a player has a gentleman's agreement with a club or a chairman or a manager, and it looks to be the case with Gyökeres at Lisbon. And I said a couple of days ago, I could see him throwing the toys right out the pram. If he believes he's got a deal that he can leave for, or a sum that he has been allowed to deal for, and all of a sudden he feels there's a backtrack, that's only going to end in tears, mate.
Well, it happened a few seasons ago, if you remember, with Harry Kane. He went AWOL, didn't he, for the return of pre-season trading, because he claimed a gentleman's agreement with Daniel Levy that he could leave. He ended up staying and ultimately joined Bayern Munich in a later window. But you're right, this all stems around the fact that the Sporting president promised Gyökeres that he could leave for £60 million. Now, because there's more than one club at the table, he's come out publicly and said we're not going to let him leave that cheaply. Gyökeres very unhappy with that. I don't know where this ends, really, because I'm not sure that Gyökeres holds too many of the cards. I think Sporting will continue to drive a hard bargain. And you wonder, will that deter Premier League clubs? Manchester United are massive admirers, but we know they've got their own PSR issues. So Jim Ratcliffe was telling anyone who would listen, they could go bust at the end of the season. So I don't think they're going to play over the odds for Gyökeres.
Do you think he's the answer for Manchester United? Because I've heard, I think Rio Ferdinand recently saying on his podcast that he's not sure that he's the answer. They've got to be careful after Højlund coming in, and that's not worked.
It's funny,
they have to be 100% sure, don't they, Crookie?
Yeah, they do. And you look at Darwin Núñez, who we've already talked about this morning. He's scored bags of goals in Portugal, but obviously hasn't been able to translate that into the Premier League. The one nagging doubt with me when it comes to Gyökeres is that Brighton let him go to Coventry. And you look at Brighton, you look at Tony Bloom and his data, they don't make many mistakes, do they? So just because you score goals in Portugal doesn't necessarily mean you can do it in the Premier League. But I do think he's a better player than Rasmus Højlund, and he does fit the system. And obviously Ruben Amorim has that pre-existing relationship with him.
Crookie, in the post-season, pre-season, will you and I be getting an opportunity to share a beer in the Algarve this summer?
I think we certainly will, mate. I'm there end of July. I'm off to Mallorca in a couple of weeks, and then I've got Portugal penciled in for July.
How much time off do you lot get?
If MD deserves a bit of time off, it's that fella there and Adrian Durham.
All right.
Nobody else. Those two deserve a bit of time off. Great stuff, mate. Thanks for your time.
Cookie.
I look forward to seeing you over there. Take care. That was all the latest transfer news, and it's all available on our website, talksport.com. Talksport.com even, and tune into the Transfer Insiders. That's from 7 p.m. tonight. That was Crookie's Roundup. One more time for me.
Crookie's Roundup, right here every day. Crookie's Roundup, which players are on their way. If an agent's got a story.
Hello, Alex Crook. What you got for me?
Crookie gets it first.
Yeehaw, cowboy! There's a snake in my boot.
Look, I know it's childish. I don't care. I love it. It kills me.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.